This meeting is being recorded.
There you go.
So we are rated 10. So we'll to respect everybody's time. I think we'll start right on time and we'll just keep letting people in. I'd just like to say good morning, everyone. My name is Jenny Glussman and I'm with the Sage Hill Community Futures office. Us and Community Futures Northwest out of North Battleford are very excited to be bringing you today's session. Plus, there's a series. There's 4 in part of this, but we're excited to have Shelley here, and I'm glad that everybody can join us today. As we gather here today, we want to acknowledge we are on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis. We pay our respect to the First Nation and Métis ancestors of this place and reaffirm our relationship with one another. Just a little bit about the Community Futures program. We offer, most people know us as loans, advice, support for small businesses, but we also do a lot of work with community groups, organizations. So our offices, there's 13 of us across the province. And like I said, today it's Sage Hill out of the Bruno area and Northwest, which is in the North Battleford area. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica and she's going to introduce our speaker for today.
So hi there, everybody. My name is Jessica Roerson, and today we are here with Shelley Thone Tchaikovsky. And Shelley owns a business called TC Consulting, and she's also the mayor of Foam Lake. So TC Consulting is a service that started in 2013 to be able to share and utilize some of her past experiences and professional experience. So following a 33-year career working in rural municipal recreation in Saskatchewan, Shelley started offering different training and workshops to municipalities and to community organizations to help in the realm of economic development and well, you know what? I think Shelley is better to maybe speak about some of her other experience. She also mentioned that her and her husband had a greenhouse for 20 years and so has had an experience in retail. So, and she said before we got onto this call that she feels that everybody should have an experience working in the retail sector because you learn a lot, even like as a business owner, working with customers, but also the other side of owning a retail business. So that being said, welcome, Shelley.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Jessica. Appreciate the preamble, and I appreciate you inviting me here today, and I appreciate all of you that have joined us. I'm just going to start sharing my screen, and here's one of those technological things that always works. Let's get the slideshow going. Okay. Again, thank you, Northwest and Sage Hill. And I'll just mention that it was fun when I logged on prior to I guess, get acquainted with Jenny and with Jessica. I mean, we both have previous experiences together. Jessica, got to know you a little bit in preparing for this session. And Jenny, I'm going to mention this, both of us are proud graduates of Viscount Central High School. Jenny, I came from the south of Viscount Stream. Jenny came from more the Plunkett way. So it's near and dear to my heart to be back in the Sage Hill area. And I also have near and dear connections with the Northwest and the North Battleford area, as I actually worked as a research officer there for the Department of Culture and Youth way back in my youthful days, and was stationed out of North Battleford. So have a lot of fond memories there too. So glad you could all be here. Just what we're going to cover today, so you have an idea of where we're going over the next hour and a half. We're going to talk obviously about planning or lack of planning, but we'll cover what we're trying to achieve today in this session. What is planning, talking a bit about lack of planning, some of the causes and symptoms, the importance of planning. And I guess this has been my soapbox for the last number of years, is I really believe planning and lack of planning is one of the diseases within our, I guess, our province, our municipalities, our organizations, and even businesses. And then talking a bit about types of planning and allowing comments and questions as we go. And I think Jenny and Jessica are going to be watching the chat box if you have
Yep.
questions. And I encourage people to, if you have a question, ask it through the chat box as we go, and we'll try and stop and answer them. Or if I think that questions might be answered as we go on, I'll also defer till then. I'm a Saskatchewan born farm girl, and I'm proud of it. I really believe that a lot of my, I guess, my ethics and my work attitudes come from what I learned growing up on the farm, and community involvement and the importance of community development. I also learned from examples of my parents. My formal education is in sport, culture, and recreation administration and community development. As Jessica mentioned, I was a municipal manager in parks and recreation, and then moved over to the elected side after a reasonable amount of time away from the employee side. I ran a greenhouse business and nursery business for 20 years, and have been working predominantly with rural area communities and organizations. I think I love working with people, and I love sharing the stories, because I really believe building relationships and storytelling is how we further the work that we do. And that's, I get the most out of that, that type of education. And I'm starved to hear people's stories of success and people's stories where things didn't work out, because I think that's how we actually truly learn and move forward. So right now, I want you to think in one word or phrase, just short phrase. When we say plan, what immediately comes to your mind? Share with us in the chat box. I just want to kind of see where you folks are thinking of, or how it makes you feel when we talk about planning. So if you would share some of your chats, I'm going to open my chat box so I can follow it as well. What comes to mind? Planning equals preparation. Organized. We'll just wait. Organized ideas. Yeah. Time commitment, but beneficial. Isn't that the truth? Direction. I like that one, thinking outside of the box. And I think that obviously deals with looking at different ways to utilize resources or partnerships than we traditionally do. Just wait a couple more seconds if there's any more of you. Okay. Thank you for sharing there. I think the word that comes to my mind when I think of planning initially is success. That's the first thing that I think of, because I really do equate planning with success of whether it's an organization or a business as well. I think what we're hoping to achieve, or the outcomes we're hoping to realize through the session today, is that we see increased understanding that really it's not an option. Planning really is a must. We want to hopefully that you leave with some increased knowledge and skills with regards to the various aspects of planning and the various types of planning, and that increased confidence and levels to promote it with your organizations and your business. And that's a tall order, because often we need to have that one person or maybe a couple people that are promoting planning within an organization or the leadership. It's not an automatic with a lot of groups. It needs to be sold. And so I'm hoping people have an increased confidence level to actually take it back and sell it when it comes time to moving forward with planning. The actual goals, more specifics, again, we hope you have the opportunity to participate through your comments or questions, as well as takeaway information to use with your respective organizations. There's some, besides this, the slide presentation is going to be available to you, and I think a recording as well, that you can look back on or share. There's also some templates that I've found useful working with organizations that will be made available to you. I believe Jessica and Jenny will be sharing them electronically following the presentation. So those are some of the specific goals from the session. Right now, I just want to see where we're at with a poll, and ask, Jenny to load it. If you would participate, does your organization perform at the present time any formal type of planning as a group? We'll give you a minute to.
This is cool. This is the first time I've done this. Sorry.
They are neat, aren't they? Yeah.
I can actually see the results happening.
Yeah. And then once you'll get a chance, once you figure you've let it go enough, you can share the results and we'll see where we're at. Yeah.
Okay, so it says when that time comes on my screen, it says end poll. So when I do that, will it then share it, or do I need to just?
You'll end the poll and then you can click share and the results come up. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, everyone. I just got really excited because it's something new.
Isn't it nice when a plan comes into fruition?
Exactly.
Well, we don't need to do any more of this session because
Yeah.
the plan has worked.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just give everybody, I think we've got everybody's in here just about. Maybe I'm missing a couple. Right. With that, okay, we'll end the poll now and we'll see what happens. Oh, share results. Here we go.
Yeah. This is awesome.
Now, can everybody see that?
I think everybody should be able to see the poll results that are shared
Okay.
over the top of the PowerPoint slide right now. And 67% of you, and that is wonderful, actually perform some type of formal planning. 11% no, and 22% kind of. And you know what, this is pretty common now, but I'm really, really impressed, I think, with the 67%. And I think that's different sectors, or I think at different places in, I guess, their comfort level with planning. And I would suggest that, you know, a lot of people that have connections with Community Futures, planning has been a major part of your connection. Other sectors aren't so fortunate because obviously Community Futures is all about planning towards success. So that's really good. I think we've got, we could say, well, we can stop the presentation now because we have like 70% of you. But you know what? I always think, even those of you that are actively planning already, there's always something or a tidbit that you may take from any presentation. So that's great. I'm really happy to see that because that sends a message that I think the planning message is in fact moving forward. So we're going to start off with what is planning. And I wish it was just as simple that we could just leave it with this simple dictionary definition. But I think we need to get into sometimes paraphrasing or reframing it as well. But it is an act that organizations do before they actually do something or try and achieve something. So it's actually a process. It's about defining your strategy and making decisions on the resources that you as an organization have. You know, I think we deal with human resources, we deal with physical resources, you know, and financial resources is probably the biggest one. It's creating a roadmap for your organization to follow. You know what, you have dreams, you have outcomes that you want to try and reach for. And you have to be able to identify those towards identifying potential hazards as well. And that's a thing that planning does do. And I know we'll talk about that a little bit further on in the presentation, is that it does help lessen the liabilities that you may face as you go about doing the work that you do. Preparing today or preparing for tomorrow today, through taking a look at yourself as a business or an organization, what impact do you want to make? And you know, when we talk about impact, I think, or outcomes, yeah, we have community organizations, but we also have that are nonprofit, but we also have for-profit businesses. And I think the one thing that I just want to qualify is that for-profit businesses don't necessarily, their ultimate goal isn't just, in many cases, to make a living. That's a pretty important one. It's right up here. But the fact is that we have a lot of social impacts as business people that we want to make too. And I remember during my time as in a retail business, we also wanted to make a difference in the environment. We wanted to reconnect people, I guess, with the land and cultivating, you know, plants and landscaping and that type of thing. Yeah, making money was important to us. Yes, it was, but there were other things. So I think impact isn't just for nonprofits. It's also for-profit businesses, and the social impact is a big part of that. But it's deciding where you want to go and the steps on how you want to get there. I believe, as I've said many times before, that I believe lack of planning is a disease. And it's one of the greatest challenges in organizations. Hoping for the best really has been a lot of organizations, and in some cases businesses' best plan. I think that's not a good thing, to be honest with you. And most organizations or leadership will tell you that way more time is spent in the preparation for the work that they do as opposed to actually doing. Laying that groundwork is the essence of success. So what causes, and this is something that when I started doing some planning workshops, I said, well, what are the truths about planning? And I've actually, these are things that information I've gathered from people as I've gone around and talking and listened to them about why we don't plan. And it's not that much fun. And that's the bottom line. Like, people say, I really don't like doing it. You know, it takes a lot of time. And someone mentioned that in the chat box when we said, what comes to mind? Well, it's a commitment, time and commitment. People are more comfortable, and I put my hands up when I say this, we're more comfortable in the actual doing, the hands-on, collecting the money from our customer or at the door of the admission gate that we're working for our community program or whatever. We feel more useful in the actual physical doing. And it's a mindset, I think, that we have to try and change, that the value is just as great in the head thinking that you do in the preparation, as opposed to just the doing's important, but the why you're doing it and making sure that that's roadmapped is just as important. I think some people prefer to fly by the seat of their pants, and there are those of us out there, some of them do. And I'll be honest with you, I'll share my personal experience is that I now choose to not be a part of organizations that have leadership that want to fly by the seat of their pants. And I've experienced actually probably over my career, probably 3 or 4 pretty severe situations where the leadership just would not plan. It's like, it'll all work out. It'll all work out. And what it really came down to, it was like a breakout at the zoo when it came time for doing our services and our programs, because really only the leaders who fly by the seat of their pants knew what was really going on, because it was all in their head. So at this point, to change those people, some of them are very set in their ways and have those pre-existing mindsets. And sometimes I've just personally had to walk away from groups and say, I can't do it because it stresses me out too much. And I don't value that type of work within an organization. So some of the causes as well are these once in a lifetime, never to be seen again opportunities. People are going, you know what, we have to just do this because this grant is there, we can't miss it. So what we do is we just forge forward and do things that we maybe never planned for, or that we maybe never would have done, or in some cases, actually they aren't a part of what our organization should even be doing. And that's an interesting one. But that just, when you don't have a plan with a set of priorities, this is what can happen. And what that also leads to, and I'll tell you a story about this, because I've done it, is grant funding. We don't have a plan in place, and I get a grant application from a funder that's due next week or sometimes even in 2 days. And the leaders of the organization say, get this grant application in. Well, why? Well, I don't know, but the money's too good to miss. Well, what are we going to use it for? Well, I'm really not sure, just get an application in for us. Well, okay. So what do? Our organization has no set vision, no set mission, and no set outcomes or priorities. So what did I do? Made them up. And there's very few of us, if we've been in the granting game, that haven't done that. Am I proud of it? No. But the fact is that I probably came close on some of the things that I put in the application that were probably pretty close to the vision and mission, because I knew my organization. But the outcomes and what we're doing, well, no, I had to just fabricate it. That's what happens. And that is happening out there. And we can't afford to do that anymore, because I'll tell you, I sit on various grant adjudication teams. And the simple fact is that savvy grant adjudicators can smell stuff from a mile off that's been made up. They just can. They're good at it. And so we can't afford to do that anymore. But that's a cause. And sometimes the word strategic scares the heck out of people, or just program planning scares the heck out of people, because they think it's not something their organization should do, or it's something above them. Well, guess what? It's not. Planning isn't just for corporate boardrooms. It's for our boardrooms and our coffee rooms that we're dealing with in small business and small organizations every day. Have I missed any causes that you folks think or see? Just put them in the chat box if I've missed anything. What do you think some of the causes or truths about planning might be, or lack of planning? I'll just give you a second. This isn't a poll. You can just, we'll keep moving, but if you think of something, feel free to just put it into the chat box. So those are the causes, some of the symptoms. And again, I think we need to be able to recognize some of the things in the organizations that we work with. And these are things that I have seen. And again,
we do have 2 comments in the box now. Okay. Feeling overwhelmed, too much to take on. Lack of knowledge is the other one.
Absolutely. And I think those are very, very common. And I think joining sessions like this can help to alleviate that planning doesn't have to be scary or unreachable. So, and I think education sessions like this go a long way towards saying, hey, we can do this. So that's good. Thank you for those, for sharing those comments. But I think some of the symptoms, if you touch base with a board of director or a leader in the organization, about their mission, vision, or their direction, and they actually don't know what you're talking about. That's a pretty severe symptom. If you have an organization that basically just does what they always have done, and I'm going to tell you right now, that is a saying that I really have a distinct dislike for. Well, we'll just do what we've always done. And that is more common than you think. When you sit down at an organization table, when I sit down at my council table, and I hear, well, what did we do 10 years ago on that? Well, no, I feel we should be asking, what is the policy on that today? Because that means we've done some planning. If we have to start looking back to what we did 10 years ago, then we haven't done our job planning. There are some exceptions to that. And when I use historical, the word historical, and I think of God bless the agricultural societies in our province. And I think two that come to mind immediately are, and I know there are more, but the Invermay Agricultural Society, not far from where I live, they've run an agricultural fair for honestly like 110 years or something. Abernathy, down in that Fort Qu'Appelle area, they are well over 100 years as well. Well, I think they're building on tradition. And I think some of our historical services are doing what they have always done because it's a part of our tradition and things that we hold near and dear. So, I mean, there are some caveats to not doing what you've always done. And I think historical groups are one of those, or museums and that type of thing. But another symptom is lack of cooperation. I think if you find an organization that is not out there actively trying to create synergy with other groups or be better, share resources, that's probably a symptom that, you know, they maybe don't have a plan in place, because plans tend to promote partnerships and cooperation, especially in the days of limited resources that we have now. When our leadership basically calls the shots, we don't have any other say. Generally, there's no plan in place when that happens. And sometimes that even happens when plans are in place. I experienced that with an organization, a business organization I belonged to, where they did a strategic plan. And it was all about business development and providing workshops for accounting and social media savvy skills to learn social media, and that type of thing was part of the plan. But when we go to the board meetings, the first thing that we discussed, and pretty much the only thing, was when the hamburger sale would be and what time our parade would start. Well, I'm sitting back and I'm going, well, we have a plan. Shouldn't we be doing that? And there was a long silence. And it said, yeah, anyway, what time will the parade start? Well, needless to say, I stepped back and said, well, if we aren't going to follow our plan, because we had leaders that were totally just deviating from it. So again, I chose to not be a part of that. And I didn't have the time to try and fix it at that point. So I stepped away, but that can be a symptom. And I say this next statement with all due respect to long-serving volunteers or board members. Yeah, man, you built organizations. I believe we owe you a great honor for the work you've done. But the fact is that sometimes tired, burnt out, not willing to examine new trends or new ways, with no turnover and no succession of new people, sometimes is a symptom because there's no planning. Because part of planning is taking a look at your environment and the new trends that are happening. And sometimes our long-serving membership don't embrace that as much. So that can be a symptom. Organizations that don't have formally developed budgets or don't evaluate and assess their work. Usually don't have plans, or they haven't elevated their plans to the point of evaluation and monitoring as part of it. Organizations that are not necessarily successful in securing funding. And again, I alluded to this in a story before. If they are successful, often if they don't have a plan, then they're doing some BSing, like I did and have done. Because if you don't have a plan, you're putting that all on somebody's shoulders to answer the questions that the funders want. And that's not fair for an organization to do that to an executive member. So I think you're putting someone in a position of having to make some things up. Groups that only use numbers as indicators of success. And I guess this gets into evaluation. That can be a symptom of lack of planning, because their only way to evaluate what they've done is, number one, did we make any money? Yeah, we didn't lose money. So our service is a success. And number two, well, we had 150 people at it. So that's a success. Well, those are successes in one form, but did you make an impact? Did you help people to better value the cultural diversity in our community at the event that they just took in? Or if there are no indicators of impact or well-being, that can be an example of no plan. Because in today's planning, it's not all just about the budget lines. We have to look at the impact that we're making as well. Some planning triggers, and these are some things that I have found that when organizations get their backs up against a wall, these are often the triggers that will sometimes force them to say, we better get our act together. We better get planning. Often financial stress or crisis is at the top of the list. Hey, we're going to be out of money. We don't know where our next rent is going to come from. So hence, we better plan. It's like a similar situation when we're faced with a life and death situation, which I never have been, thank goodness. And we all of a sudden, maybe we aren't maybe a very, very religious person, but we start to pray to our maker at that time. It's like we don't necessarily value planning until we're in a form of a crisis. That can be a trigger. Change in leadership or membership. All of a sudden you bring in some new people that realize there are new trends or that type of thing, can trigger the need to start planning. Legislation or funder regulations. Again, legislation, if you're legislated from some other type of a higher up agency that requires your plans be submitted, and that might be, you've got to submit your plans or we're not going to fund you. So that can be a trigger. Realization of liability and risks. And I think that's a really important one, is when people start realizing that we can be at risk without a plan, and that plans can help identify those potential risks, because that's a part of planning, is risk management in what you're doing. Education and training. Sitting in on sessions like this can trigger groups, some leadership to go back and say, here's some good information, here's a template, let's take a look and see if we can start doing some work in it. Plus, if there are potential partnership opportunities. And again, if you're going to work with a partner, if somebody comes to meet a partner, I want to know if they somewhat have their act together. I want to know what their mission or their vision is. I want to know if we're like-minded, because I probably will choose not to partner with you if we don't share some of the same values or some of the same visions. So I think these are things that can trigger organizations to want to start planning. This saying actually holds true, and this one goes back, I don't know when it was invented, but it was invented a long time ago. It's old, it's even older than me, Jenny and Jessica. So that tells you it's really old. But I find it is true. You know what, you might get along for a while, but it's going to come back to bite you somewhere down the road if you don't have a plan. So I really believe this to be true, is if you fail to plan, you eventually will plan to fail. And I think failure can be at different levels, but it will happen. You aren't alone. And I think we all experience lack of planning symptoms at different times. Every organization or business is at different points in their life cycle, so to speak. And I think it continues to be a part of our culture in our organizations. Everybody does not value it, but I think we need to work hard to try and change the attitude. So I think there is some solace in the fact that we aren't alone in this. And I always love sitting down with colleagues or with organizations or just community groups and listening to the things that not only are important to them, but also some of their challenges. And you know what? We're all in the same boat. We really are. And I know that can make you feel better, but what it does is it gives you someone else to reach out to say, let's work together on this. And I think that's a good thing. That's how our communities and our businesses were built. So I think if we build on that fact that we aren't alone and together, let's try and change the attitude towards lack of planning. Any questions? I'm going to pause for a minute before we go through some of the important aspects of planning.
I have a question, Shelley. Lisa here from Dalmany.
Yes, Lisa.
I am a sole entrepreneur. So, when you look at, most of this is geared into an organization or with a group. I see how this still can pertain to me.
Yep.
As a single business person, that planning and so forth. I guess where mine is selling that planning, my vision and mission to other partners or stakeholders or stuff like that. What would you advise for a single business owner?
I would, and I'm in the same situation as you, Lisa. With my consulting company, I employ people on and off based on contracts that I'm working on if I need extra assistance or administrative help, that type of thing. But I still take myself through a process of development of my mission and my vision as an organization. And I have values. And I also take a look at the environment around me and what's current. And, as I go to market and brand myself, what I try and do is make sure that I'm doing that in an area that, number one, I have some of the technical knowledge about it, or I will gain the technical knowledge, for example, to be able to consult with, and that I actually, will portray that in my marketing and branding. And I use an example of New Citizens and diversity. And again, these are all things that are fairly, I'm going to say still, they aren't trends. They're here and they're here to stay. But for example, diversity and New Citizens in our community, I did some work, some applied research, if you will, with focus groups and that type of thing, because I realized that in my community, in my area, New Citizens were number one. It was happening. 30 to 35% of our communities are New Citizens now, as opposed to, the settlement communities, those names that we've always seen in our communities. We have people that are immigrants from the Philippines, from Pakistan, from India. We also have migrant Canadians from BC, Ontario, that don't share the same values that we necessarily shared in our communities. So I did some work on how are we doing with inclusivity, for example, with New Citizens. our report card didn't come back that good. So there's an example of, as a community consultant, I took what was, as part of my planning and took a look at the environmental scan. This is what's happening in our communities right now. And if I want to stay current as a private entrepreneurial, is entrepreneurial a word even? I don't know, maybe I just okay, consultant, that I need to make sure that I am still working and dealing in current things, that topics that are of interest to the community and diversity and that type of thing. And so that was part of my planning. So I think planning is just as important for us people that are sitting in for-profit businesses as it is for the nonprofits. And this is totally transferable. And I use the same templates for myself that I use with nonprofit organizations. Although the financial aspect of outcomes that is there. Often with a total nonprofit, the financial aspect is there because they're wanting to put that money back into some type of a social enterprise, for example. And I may be, wanting to pay off a loan of some type. It's a different usage, but that's probably the main difference. I still believe that there are a huge amount of social aspects to us in our private businesses, because people are looking for that now too with private entrepreneurs. Do you have some social enterprise aspects to your work? So have I answered your question, or have I just rambled on?
No, you have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. That was a really good question. Sometimes I ramble on. And and by the time I finish, I'm going, have I answered that question? And poor Lisa's sitting there going, what the heck did she just say?
And I'll interrupt, because I agree wholeheartedly. From the community future side, we deal with both, and that planning, I guess in the entrepreneurial word, we use the word business plan. So it's the same thing. It's the steps of, it's a roadmap. When you talked about the roadmap in the beginning, it's how I'm going to get from A to B. And it's important, so important in both sides. It's so interrelated.
Exactly. Thanks for sharing that, Jenny, because yeah, it's just, what, here's something that I've said before in planning sessions too. You know what I wish, if I had one wish with my work world, it would be that the god of planning would come down and with stone tablets give us the same terminology, so that we all use the same terms, so that when we did sessions and I talk about outcomes and the next person is talking about goals and the next person talks about means and ends, can we put it all together and come up with some type of stone tablet terms? Because that's confusing, and it's literacy, planning literacy is a challenge. And so getting on the same page, because the for-profit world and the corporate world does use some different terms. And I mean, sitting here with a business plan template, really, a lot of the things I'm looking at on this business plan template are the same things that I'll take to a community nonprofit group. Maybe just tweaked a little bit. Maybe the order isn't the same, but they're doing the same things. So yeah, I think it's, and I really wish, I wish someone would just make me God for a day, and I would do that. Although my husband says, you think you're God anyways all the time. And I'm going, well, I'm not that bad, but. Isn't that what wives are supposed to do? I'm just their partners, isn't it? Just saying, but. Okay, the importance of planning. And again, just what we've always done. And we really do that. And I know I even found that in business is if I didn't update our plan on a regular basis, it was just, well, I'm so tired. Let's just do what we did last year. Let's do the same thing. Even when it came to supporting community activities, and we all, as private business people, we get asked for sponsorship dollars. Well, you know what? even putting some plans together for that. Well, you know what, I think that right now, here seems to be the biggest need in our community. Not just waiting for them to knock on the door. No, here's $25 or here's $100 or here's, because we get asked over and over again, saying, no, I'm going to use through my planning and environmental scan of my community, I'm going to give where the need is most right now. And I'm not going to necessarily give to everybody. So that's an example of not doing it just because that's what we've always done, but lack of planning will make you do that because it's, well, I don't have a plan, so I have to do something. It defines your organization's view of success. And again, without a plan, the idea is, how do we know if we've succeeded? And there's a good point. You know, are we successful? And again, what we do, we tend to just use our budget lines as a reason for success if we don't have a plan. And success is way more than budget lines. And I know from a municipal perspective, we're really changing that through our asset management work and trying to put the impacts that we're making from our plan right next to the columns of numbers. But again, we've grown up with numbers. Numbers is what tells us whether we've been good or bad. And I mean, we've got to have some type of roadmap in place to know if we in fact have succeeded or if we're arriving towards our vision. Highest inflation that we've seen in how many years? I mean, they said 30, 40 years when it was 3.5. Now we're over 7% inflation. Wow. This is hitting us hard, not only as individuals, but as organizations and businesses. We have to stretch those resources. Planning can help to do that. It sets your priorities, identifies potential risks and problems ahead of time, plus promotes potential partnerships. We can't afford not to plan. And that's the bottom line. We might get by, but we're not going to get by in a good way if we don't plan. Planning equals success. And I'll tell you a story. We're viewed, people that plan, and individuals, whether they be individuals or whether they be community organizations, are viewed in a positive, successful light. I just retired as a volunteer from an organization. It's a local combine lotto. I was on that group for 26 years. We've been successful, highly successful at raising millions of dollars for community infrastructure towards the well-being of people in our community. And they plan. They are a well-oiled machine. And that machine is viewed as highly successful because of their planning, not just their success in the ventures they do, but when it comes time to replace seats around that table, they are viewed as successful. They understand their roles, their responsibilities. They plan, and people actually are happy to step forward and work with that group. Gee, there's an epiphany. We hear so much, we can't get anybody to come on our board anymore. We need help. Well, guess what? Planning breeds success, which breeds a view of positivity. And I want to be part of a winner. And that is true. It does make a difference. So people desire to be a part of a winner, and planning can make that happen. We need to get everybody on the same page in a consistent direction. We've talked about that. I mean, defining our direction, our programs or services. If we've got groups, people within our group that really don't know why we're doing what we're doing, you're kind of dead in the water, to coin a phrase, because, you know, it's like the old saying, we do things right. And I've had this argument at my council table a number of years ago when I was trying to promote planning, strategic planning, is I was kind of ridiculed that we're very good at planning. And I said, I agree, we are very good at planning. We're very good at planning projects. There's a difference. We're great at what we do, but are we doing the right things was the secondary question. And there was just silence. What do you mean by that? No, we are wonderful at completing the projects that we plan or the services. But how do we know if we're even doing the right services? Because we haven't really taken a look at what we want to impact or how we want to better things in our community. We're just doing things that we've always done, or because Shelley said we need to do this. Yeah, you're right, we need to do it. Well, I have no database that says we need to do it. It's just because I think we need to do it. So a strategic direction helps you make sure you're actually doing the right things that your organization embraces and values. We're all good at doing things right, but planning and strategic planning make sure you're doing the right things. Simplifying and guiding decision making. Remember, I said that once in a lifetime thing that we cannot miss? Well, you know what? Having a plan in your hand says, well, you know what? These are our strategies. These are our priorities for the next 3 years right here. I don't see that. I know it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, but the fact is, it'll just be a distraction and take away from the resources we've got. So I don't think we should do it. Or the flip side to that is it truly is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And sometimes those things do happen. So guess what? We're going to realign our priorities to make it work. But our job as leaders and as business people is to, I don't think, deviate from our plan, but it's to change the plan if we have to. So, or change the policy to allow us to work with that once in a lifetime opportunity so that you are in fact still being a good solid planner. So I think a plan can help in that area. Communicating the same message. If you don't have your visions and your missions, if I ask, Jenny, your board of directors for Sage Hill, if I come and I walk into your board meeting room and I say, what's your mission? And if you don't have one, and I ask each of your people individually, I'm going to get 6 or 8 different answers. It's like the game of gossip. You'll get different answers because as you go around the table, because people are diverse. And I think we need to recognize that. And even though people are diverse and that strengthens our organizations, we still need to unite when it comes to the direction we're going. So we need to do that by getting something on paper so that we're all preaching the same message. And that's really important because you'll just get confusion if everybody's got a different direction or a different, well, I thought this is what we were doing. And then you get frustration and then you get dissension and then problems. So, I mean, the plan maximizes the team. And I think they complement each other. The team establishes the plan, but the plan gives the team the power to do the best that they can be. It's key to absolutely everything we do. From financial budget, setting our priorities, grants and sponsorships, we can actually portray our plan to our funders. It's an approved plan. Shelley didn't make it up. Staff and volunteer management. This is huge. This is huge. You know, one of the reasons, I'll tell you one of the things that I don't miss from working as a municipal manager is human resource management. Oh, I wonder why I'm missing some hair. I was pulling my hair out. It's so challenging these days is managing human resources. And it's just, we're in a different world we're working with like 5 to 7 different generations in the same office workspace who share different values, different work ethics. So, I mean, a plan is so important when it comes to how we're managing staff and volunteers, when it comes to training, expectations, roles. And you can't have those things. You can't fly by the seat of your pants with those anymore. You can't do it because you'll end up in a lawsuit. So, I mean, the plan is so important. Infrastructure management, if that's part of your role or responsibility, and management of the assets you've got, you have to have a plan. You have to have a life cycle on your bricks and mortar. You have to know where you're going with it to be effective. And partnerships, if I don't have a plan in place, how am I going to approach potential partners to see if we even are like-minded? You have to share some type of values and be working towards similar types of things. It's like when we look at the public sector and we've got health, education, municipalities, government relations, that type of thing. If you really look at their missions and their visions, they're so similar. We're very like-minded. It's just we're working in different sectors. And so I think that's a good example that it makes sense for us. We already have a similar foundation to be able to work together. And I think the bottom line is, once you folks as leaders in your fields really accept and promote planning, you become the facilitator and the catalyst to make it happen. You are the person that is going to go to your board table or your other business, your chamber of commerce or whatever, and start saying, we need to change this culture. We need to become a culture of change, and that planning has to be a part of that change. You are champions and you are a major part of that. So, Jenny and Jessica, we're back to you. This is just of interest. I want to see, we've got just about 70% people that are planning. Where are you at? How many of you actually have missions and vision statements within your plan?
Okay, I'm trying to get to the next poll, and I've still got the last one up here.
Okay,
Oh,
you've got to ditch that one.
there, I found it. Hey, can you see it?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
The only reason I put polls in is it gives my voice a chance to have a drink of tea. I hope I'm doing okay for time. Should be.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. We've got till like 3 o'clock, right?
Sure.
You guys can see why I was a good BSer with grants, right?
Yeah. Okay, just give it a couple more seconds here. And if everybody's got theirs in, okay, I'm going to, okay, let's try this again. Okay,
Okay. It's about 50-50, close to 50-50, yes and no. And that's not uncommon. Even though we've got approximately 70% of the participants that actually have some plans in place, but not everybody has, say, the actual full strategic type plan in place. That's very common. People have different plans at different levels. When we go into the next section, we're going to talk a bit more specific about the content of strategic planning and the content of program or service planning and that type of thing. So this doesn't surprise me. And again, the not sure doesn't surprise me either, because there's some, I guess, unsuredness. I think I'm making these words up as we go, but unsuredness sometimes about what is a mission, and or what is a vision, and what's the difference. And I think that's the education aspect of it. So good, thank you for sharing that information. And Jenny, just a reminder, anytime if you've got any questions in the poll, I'd be happy to stop and answer them. But okay, we're just going to move into common types of planning. And the two basic ones are the strategic planning, which is a planning that's over a time frame of what common. I'm finding a lot of the organizations that I work with now are wanting to go more towards a 5-year plan. I find the organizations that want a 3-year plan, and I actually just did a strategic plan about a year and a half ago for a community group that only wanted a 2-year plan because they wanted action and they wanted action right now. And it was at their insistence that the strategic direction only be for 2 years because we will revisit it. And they were so gung ho. But generally, it's 3 to 5, and I'm finding more 5-year now. The challenges of some of the longer term planning is our world changes so fast. And I think that's the thing is with strategic planning, it needs to be visited probably annually. But the fact is that not necessarily changed, but it needs to be visited to see, are we still current with our priorities? Because our world changes so fast. Operational planning, or some people refer to it as program service delivery, this gets into the actual more doing or the management side. And those of you that are involved in policy governance organizations, you'll have your board will deal with the strategic plan, then the actual operations will get turned over to the managers, your paid staff or your volunteers, to actually plan the services or the work that will achieve your strategic direction that you've set. So those are the two basic types of planning that I'm going to talk about today, and the planning continuum and who's involved at what level. That's the $64 question. And then again, I would love to be able to bring the stone tablets down and say, here's who needs to be involved at each level. But the simple fact is that it varies from organization to organization, from business to business, because there's no exact blueprint for how every group is set up or the structure, their administrative structure. But you start with the strategic plan, it's more about the why. It's about setting your vision, your mission, what you value, your beliefs, your outcomes, the impact you want to make. Then it goes into your operational plan, which is about the specific goals and what will success look like for you. It's the how. Then you move in to the actual actions. It's the doing, the what. And how many of you sat down at a board table and, or even with your business partner, and poured a cup of coffee and you sit down and the first thing that somebody says is, so what are we going to do? That drives me crazy, because I say, no, back up everybody. Don't even talk about what we're going to do yet. Let's talk about why we're doing it. And again, that gets into, are we doing the right things? Because if we start at what are we going to do, that's what we're best at. We're best at doing the what. But let's back it up and make sure that the what is actually the right thing that we should be doing. And that's why we start back with the strategic direction. And again, who's involved? Typically, you'll have the strategic plan is led by your board of directors or your council, elected or appointed board or council, your owners and your CEOs and that type of folks will be involved there. Sometimes the staff and managers are involved there. It really depends on what you want. Sometimes people don't want the managers involved at that level because they want the elected officials or the boards that are appointed to be able to speak freely without without staff interference. Because sometimes management and staff can take over strategic planning. And so you have to, that gets into proper facilitation to ensure that they don't. But when you get into the next step of the operational plan, and again, it depends on your organization. If you were a small community group, you're probably you're the board, you're also the managers, you're the operators, you do everything. So you're involved at every level because you're an operational and advisory board or group. But if you're a larger community or a larger organization, you may have some paid staff to do some of that. And generally, if you have, I'll use my municipality as an example. We're policy governance where our elected council sets the policy and the direction. And then the operational kitchen are our paid staff. And we as elected officials do our darndest to stay out of that kitchen. And when we step into it, we hear about it, trust me. The CAO, I'll sit down and ask something and she'll go, "You're out of your wheelhouse again." That's my job. And they'll go, "Oh, okay." So I'll step back and let our paid people do their work. But so the answer to who should be involved at what level, again, is it can be a slippery slope because it depends how your organization is set up. And I can't state that any simpler, but I think it's really up to you. But I think the general continuum is consistent throughout. We need to know the difference between strategic and operational planning. And I think strategy is about, again, why we do what we do. It's stepping back from the activities and the services we deliver. And it's more about intellectually putting some plans on paper about why. What impact do we want to make? What type of funding, say, if you are for profit, where are we at? What are our goals? What are our outcomes towards achieving? And then your operational aspect is the next step in that. Operational plans are basically the things that you're going to do towards meeting your strategic direction, your outcomes, your vision. This is an operational outline. You'll develop supporting goals. It's the how, it's the specifics. If we want to increase people's knowledge in the area of planning, that's an outcome. That's a strategic outcome. Now, one of the supporting goals that Northwest and Sage Hill may have for that is we shall organize an educational session regarding the lack of planning. Then we get into the details, the date, the time, the facilitator. We may engage the community or our members to find out through things like asset mapping, for example, where we can get people to do this work. We may have an evaluation plan, what resources are required, what's our marketing, what's our budget for this work. This is the actual doing. Getting down and getting it done is the operational aspect. And this, as I mentioned before, is where the majority of our groups start their work. And this is where I say, stop what you're doing, go back and get your vision and your mission and your values set. So you've got your foundation. So there's the difference. I'm just going to stop for a second. Does that make sense to you? The continuum and the difference between strategic and operational planning. Are there any people going, "I don't get it," or is it making sense, the continuum? Okay, I'll just carry on. If there's some comments that come up, that'll be okay. So the actual plan is a document that's agreed upon by your owners, if you're co-owners, or by your sole owner. It's easy for me to agree with myself, but I will, even as a sole owner, I will run it by a colleague. I will run it by another person that I respect in the field. Am I on the right track? What do you think? But as an organization, it's good to run it by, your membership or, your community, that type of thing. It's designed with the whole organization in mind. It paints a picture of your future. and the impacts that you want to have in your community or within your business sector within the next 3 to 5 years. It's about ideas. It's not about what you're doing. And I think that's the biggest takeaway with strategic planning. And I think that's why it's so hard for people to grasp, because we don't grasp concepts or outcomes as easy. It took me a long time. I'm going to be totally upfront with you. I poo-pooed strategic planning for a long time because I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that it was about the why as opposed to the what. And it took me a long time to realize that, wow, I get it now. We're making impacts through actually saying, here's what our community needs. Here's some of the needs within our organization. So here's how we're going to address that. So end results, I mean, promoting partnerships. I've talked about that already. I mean, if you've got the plan in place, it's a lot easier to take something in writing and say, can we work together? Here's what we think. Here's what we see. And it becomes believable. And again, I use that word believable because if I just sit down and start rambling things out of my head, it's not as believable as if I actually put a flash drive down and saying, hey, take a look at our plan. Here's where our organization or here's where my business is going. That carries a lot more weight than just Shelley sitting down and starting to talk. I love this analogy. It's our foundation. The service we provide is the tabletop, and what supports it is our mission, our vision, our values, and the impact that we want to make, our outcomes. That's what supports what we do. And that's strategic foundation. And I totally believe this has to be done to be a forward-thinking shaker and a mover in our world today. And again, the benefits, we've already covered some of these, but it helps to define your activities. It provides an opportunity for an organizational review. Now, part of my strategic planning facilitation, I always have groups or organizations take a look at their own structure. And I've had some boards that are still boards of 15 people. They haven't redone their bylaws since 1966. Now, there's a bit of an issue. So it's an opportunity to take a look at your own structure and your own memberships. This is a good time to update. It's a good reason to update our own structure as an organization, if in fact we haven't. Because it's very popular to leave bylaws. Once your bylaws and constitutions have been developed, we don't look at them again. Or it's very common in a lot of municipalities, if you ask for bylaws, well, they're somewhere. We're not sure even where they are. So that's a truth. And it happens all the time. So strategic planning will help you address that. It's a time to analyze your strengths, challenges, your SWOT analysis. And again, business plans contain those types of things. What are your strengths? What are your challenges? It's a time to look at the trends or the opportunities in your sector. And you know, it's interesting when we started doing business plans for our greenhouse and nursery operation. It was back in 1986. What really spurred the idea, and this seems kind of crazy, was the show Canada AM. Do you guys remember that morning news show on CTV every morning? And what was happening was we were seeing every 3 days out of 5 days a week, they had a horticulture expert, Mark Cullen from greenhouses down in the Niagara area, giving information on home gardening, home landscaping, home this or that. And at the same time, we realized there was a need within our community for horticultural services. And so, I mean, it was taking a look at the environment And that sent the message to us that this is a hot thing right now, horticulture. And it turned out actually the environmental scans that we did, it was. And we experienced steady growth for 19 of our 20 years. And I use watch the morning news because it's pretty accurate. After about year 12 of our greenhouse business, we started to see, you know what became the 3 days a week? How to use the internet. What is the internet? Computers at home, all those things. And I looked at my husband, Mitro, and I said, well, you know what? We may still be growing, but there's a new kid on the block and it's called technology. And honestly, it's pretty accurate because those large media corporations, they know where we're going in our world. They have people that work in that, examining trends and different things, our environment every day. So I think that's what planning will help you do as well, is sort your strategies out to be the best you can be in the environment that we're in at the time. Get your membership on the same page, measure your success. Evaluation is a huge part of it. We can have plans and we can do, but if we never actually monitor it, what the heck? Why have we done it if we don't know how we've done? And I really believe it'll help to increase your productivity because your staff, your management, your volunteers know the direction you're going. You share that with them. They're a part of your team. They know what you're trying to achieve or the impact you're trying to make. The process of strategic planning. And again, we know why we should do it, but often it's in a retreat format and it needs to be set aside, not a part of your regular board or committee meetings. You need to take a special time, a special place, decide who needs to be involved, and do it. And a lot of organizations or businesses use it as a bit of a retreat, a time to take a breath, maybe have a round of golf, a nice barbecue or something. Plus, we're going to do some planning through the day. Engaging the public. I know part of the work that I do, we do public engagement often through Google surveys or that type of thing. We take stakeholders of our organizations or our business and say, do you know about us? Do you know why we exist? Do you value what we do? Because we need to hear from people that are actually utilizing our services or potentially being impacted by the services we have. So, going outside of your group is important as well. Once the document has been developed, you need to share it. You need to share it with your organization. If you're a membership-based organization, share it with co-workers or share it with, if you're a for-profit business, share it with, like I said, other colleagues. Say, what do you think? Let's work together on this. So in a nutshell, you need to often, and this is the sad part, we need to preach buy-in. And I really believe when we get to the day, and some organizations are at that point, where they don't need the educational aspect of strategic planning. They simply are asking, can you facilitate it? We don't need to be sold on it because we already are. But a lot of organizations aren't. They need to be educated on it so that they can effectively actually perform the process. Commit to the time and energy because it does take some time and it does take some mental energy. Secure a leader. And again, it doesn't have to be a contractor or a for-profit business. Sometimes leaders can come from within your community. But I would suggest somebody from outside your organization if you're sitting down, because you need the movers and shakers of your group being able to actually have input. And if they're leading and facilitating, they don't have that opportunity. Decide who's going to be involved, set your dates and times, circulate the document prior to of what you're going to be doing. Then adopt the document, share your plans and use it. I did a strategic plan. I didn't do it, but I was involved in it, a municipal one back in 1997. It never left the shelf. We spent 2 days doing it as managers and elected officials. It didn't leave the shelf. I'm not really proud of that, but that's what happens often. So that's the thing, is sharing it. So what a strategic plan quite often will include is a historical description of your organization or your business, definitions or interpretations. And that's important because I know I did some work for a diversified organization that worked with people with disabilities. And they had a lot of terms that they needed to define so that people, when they read their plan, knew what they meant when they talked inclusion, or knew what they meant when they talked about people with disabilities, or the person first, what person first means. So often within your sector, there are interpretations. Your mission, your vision, and your values are so important. I'm going to screen share and core service focus areas. I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm cognizant of the time we've got too, but I'm going to stop sharing and share another screen for a second. I hope I don't screw this up. Okay. Core service area examples. I'm going to do this one first. Can you see that on your screen, Jenny?
What I can see is it's just a bunch of files. Not the file didn't
Yeah.
open, so
Okay, so it's not working. That's happened to me before, and because of time, I'm not going to try and fix it. Darn, that was a good file too. But what we need to look at is what are your core service or focus areas within any organization? Usually governance is one. I mean, we have to have some type of administrative structure. So governance or administration. And the example I was going to use was a local marketing organization that works on tourism, economic development, and marketing. And so they had 3 core service areas. Governance was one. A second one was tourism. And a third one was marketing, or tourism and economic development. And the third one was marketing and branding for their municipalities and within each of those organizations, they took a look and said, what impact do we want to make within each of those areas? So that was their particular strategic direction, was within 3 basic service or core focus areas. And then they developed impact statements for each of those areas, the things that they wanted to achieve or the impact they wanted to make. Then there's usually a section on how the plan will be monitored. Again, if we don't have evaluation or success indicators, plus when is it going to be monitored? You've got to say those things, because if you write it down, you're more apt to do it. But if you just leave it with no process for monitoring, that we're going to review this every year and see, are we making headway towards the impact? Or we've stated that we want to see a 10% increase in local businesses. Well, did we actually achieve that with what we did? No, we didn't. Well, why didn't we? So then you address your evaluation. And then there's usually a summary as well at the end of the plan. I'm going to try and share a plan when I'm done. I've just got a few slides left and hopefully it works. But if it doesn't, don't worry, you'll see it if you want to. And I'll share that at the end as well. Involve a good representation of your group and make sure to share your draft work for input. Before you approve it, have somebody take a look at it. How does this look? Am I totally out to lunch or am I looking good on it? Allow enough time for the scope of your work. Anywhere from 4 hours to a full day or more. It really depends where your organization is at. Send out the agenda ahead of time so people know what to expect. Inject some fun. into it. And we all saw the movie, or most of us, The Field of Dreams. My field of dreams from a community perspective is if you feed them, they will come. And honestly, it is true. Food, people go, what are they serving? I mean, it's a planning session. What are you serving? Who's catering? And it's amazing how often that's answered. So make sure you have the right person catering. And that seems very shallow, but it's true. It's like you go to a conference, they don't maybe remember the glitches in technology of the session, but they'll remember if the coffee wasn't ready at 8. That's what they'll remember. Celebrate your session at the end of the day with a toast or whatever you tend to toast with, or a performance or a round of golf, whatever turns your crank, because you got to celebrate what you do. Choose a strong leader to facilitate and direct the session. And again, that can be from outside your group. It could be a local business person that has some savvy in planning. You know what? Use graffiti walls and have some fun. Color up your planning room. People always hate it when I come into the room because I do little relationship building things all the time. And they're going, oh, we're going to play games again, aren't we? And I'm going, no, we're not playing games. We're building relationships. And I really believe that's how you get the best out of the people we work with, is we take the time to build relationships and get to know them. So do things that promote those relationships. Non-threatening. This is something that we always state at sessions. There are no wrong statements at planning. We can sort through the priorities later, but nobody is going to be ridiculed or held accountable for anything they say, unless it's illegal or something, then we'll stop you. But you will be heard without criticism, and that's what planning is all about. It's a time to take even the craziest, wildest ideas and put them all up on the wall. We can sort through it later. But I think people need to know that they're welcome in a non-judgmental forum. Use breakout groups, report back. I love working in small teams and then coming back and sharing. I find it's energizing. And let others know in the community about your plan. Again, you want people to know that you're a winner. Look at what this organization's done. They've gone through strategic planning. Here's the impact they want to make. Look at what this business has done. And I use this example. I get a local co-op food store flyer every week, every Wednesday in the mail for the sale that starts on Thursday in my town. And during the summer, I find it really interesting that they've got pictures of market garden growers where they're getting their produce from Craven or Lumsden or whatever. Here's Joe that's supplying your lettuce or maybe not your lettuce, but your carrots or your potatoes from a local farmer. And you know what they're doing is they're sharing is their values with you. And you don't think that makes a Saskatchewan farm girl feel good? Of course I want to buy my potatoes from somebody that is making a living from Fort Qu'Appelle. So that group is shouting it out. The co-op, Federated Co-op, is shouting it from the rooftops every week, showing local farmers that are putting produce that I'm picking up. That's an example of how you're shouting out your values. You need to share that, even if you're a for-profit business. Share those things that you're valuing, and that aside from making money, you're trying to make an impact in your community, because that results in people wanting to be at your business too. So aside from the free coffee you give and cookies. This is an example of strategic planning session agenda. And again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I wish I could get more into the development of vision, mission, values, outcomes, but the templates have that, because that's a whole other session. But if you can leave here knowing that these things need to be valued and worked on, I think taking the templates that will be circulated to you electronically will help you how to develop. And what is a mission? What is a vision? What are your values? And hopefully when I screen share the final thing, it'll show up, not just the files. So let's get it done. Educate your leaders, your boards on the benefits. Share your planning success stories. And I think that's important. People want to hear the stories of the successes that you've had. And that not only builds relationships, but it adds credibility. This really happened. I've really seen organizations do this. Find your planning champion within your group or your community. I think Community Futures is wonderful. There's a planning champion, an organization like Community Futures. You'll see details in the planning templates and guidebooks that will be sent to you. If you want to see examples of strategic plans, I have permission to share some of them that I've facilitated with operational work plan templates for the next steps. Just email me directly and request that. I'll certainly share what I have. And you want to talk about planning, look at my email. Look at my email. I have been out of the greenhouse and nursery business since 2007, and I haven't got around to changing my darn email. You think maybe I should change that? But there's an example. What a loser. You got
I have to share a really quick story because you were talking about planning and not looking back at bylaws. When I lived in the community of Plunkett many years ago, we had a new person move in and they were burning garbage constantly in town. And so people were complaining. So the town quickly went to their bylaws, but their bylaw hadn't been looked at since I think 1908 or something.
Oh.
And it said that there was no burning on Mondays because it was wash day.
Exactly. What a good story. And
so the town quickly had to look at their bylaws so that they could deal with the issue.
Thank you for sharing that, Jenny, because that is so typical. That is just so typical, and it's real. So the why, and again, it's your end results. Take a look at what you're wanting to have your business or your organization achieve in the end, and then fill in the blanks after that. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to try and share one thing with you before I go, and answer questions as well, but I'll see if this works. I'm so disappointed. Where are we here?
Should work.
Is anything, can you see a strategic plan?
No, I don't know, Shelley, if you opened it first before you hit share, then try sharing.
Okay, that's okay. Just wait. Okay, I'm going.
If you open that document on your screen first,
perfect. Okay.
Then when you go to share, it's going to show you everything that you have open. If you pick that one and then hit share, it might work.
Yeah. I think
I'll
so.
try it. Okay. How's that?
Yeah.
Is it supposed to say table of contents, introduction? Yep, we got it.
Do you have
River?
Should see the Redverse Activity
Yes.
Center strategic plan. Okay.
We got it.
This is the last thing I'll do. This is the final plan of this organization, an organization that employs 60 to 65 full-time employees in Redverse, as well as offers diversified service for people with disabilities. So this is kind of a final example. You've got an introduction, and this talks about the organization, a bit of their history, because they've come from a place that's pretty cool, and they need to share that because that's part of their foundation. But programs and services offered by the agency, so it explains their day programs, their supported employment programs, their vocational programs, their residential programs. Their leadership, it talks a bit about their board of directors, their staff, their management, and why they're doing strategic planning. A plan overview with definitions, the definitions of mission, vision, values, and it's somewhat of a, when you sit down and look at this, it can really give you a great overview of that organization and it's a business, it's a nonprofit, but it's very much a social enterprise because they're turning the dollars they make back into their social enterprise. But ultimately, their vision. And I mean, we just redid our strategic plan for the town of Foam Lake, and our mission was 2 pages long. Like, take a look at this. We facilitate services and advocate for people to live the life they choose. Fulfillment, quality for all people. Jessica, go ahead.
No, that is very good. That's a very concise mission.
Yeah, exactly. And then their values. And the neat thing is that they took their values to the next step and actually did values worksheets on, this is what we believe, but now how do we prove it? How do we do it? How do we do it as individuals on the board and staff? And how do we do it as an organization? How do we show respect? How do we prove that we're progressive, person first, inclusive, transparent? And I think it's one thing to say it, but that's what strategic planning is all about. It's taking it to the next step and saying, how do we actually make it happen? And that's the cool part. Here's their core service areas. Remember, I was trying to explain to you, these are their areas. They called it organizational, and that's the thing. Others might call it governance. Others might call it administration. But from an organizational perspective, these are their outcomes: positive change in prejudice and stigmas in the community. And then they had success statements. We shall see a community engaging directly with our clients. And just an example of that is what they found was happening is their clients who were functionally able to go and work at some local businesses, if the business owner had an issue with the client that was working for them from the activity center, they wouldn't talk to the client. They would phone the manager and say, we got a problem with Joe. He's swearing all the time, as an example. And they're saying, no, we need to change the prejudices that the people that are working for you can't be talked to. We have to talk to the people in the office. And so they're going to work on trying to get people, no, you talk to your employee like you would any other employee. Don't assume that because they're a person with disabilities that you can't talk to them. So that's an example of their success. And then they go through the residential, because they have a residential as one of their core service areas, plus the vocational, which is some of the work placements and that type of thing. And they have their indicators of success, their outcomes for the next 5 years. Then they go on to share, they have work plans that they're taking each of those outcomes and setting goals and who's going to do what down to the specific work to achieve each of those. And they visit it annually. It states when they monitor it, how they monitor it, but the operational plan is the next step. But their strategic plan also includes interpretations that are important for their sector: person first philosophy, self-determination. These are things that I don't work with every day, that I don't understand. So I need them interpreted. Daily living skills, functional development. Those are things, disability, an advocate. Those types of things needed to be identified. So that's an example of the why and the impact that an organization wants to make in a strategic plan. The next step is the GUI part, the papers for the how and the actions. And that, because this group is a policy governance group, this was very much board and management that did this work. Now the 65 plus employees get their hands dirty in how do we make it happen. Okay, Now I'm going to stop sharing. And I hope I've shared some information that makes sense. I'll leave it at that. I thank you. I'll take questions if you have. I know I'm 7 minutes over.
That's okay. I think, does anyone have any questions for Shelley? Feel free to unmute and ask away. We will be sending out, Shelley had referenced about some templates. We've got those. We'll be emailing those out to everybody along with the presentation. And then we will be, today was recorded, so we will also be making that available. I've had a couple asking in the chat. They've been interrupted during your presentation, so they want it sent out. So we'll make sure that, you know, everybody gets that. We also have a survey, right, Jessica? I'm going to leave that in your hands.
Yes, so the survey will come out as soon as we close this. But we also have, Shelley's back on October the 27th with another session, and that is about asset mapping. So that again is October the 27th at 10 a.m. Till 11:30.
And then she's back in January and February about grant ready and grant writing too. So mark your calendars for those two exciting topics as well.
And there'll be no BSing on grant writing. I was just asked, I saw in the chat that somebody wanted my email again, my very ancient email that needs to be updated. If I could ask you guys to share that with everyone, that'd be fine. So
yes.
And you know what, any questions, my door is open. I am all about building capacity in for-profit or non-profit. And if I can help you answer any questions, I'm more than pleased to do that. Just holler. But you gotta holler loud because I don't hear so good.
Awesome. Okay, with that, thanks everybody on behalf of Community Futures Northwest and Community Futures Sage Hill. And Shelley, thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll see everybody hopefully in October.
Yes, thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.